Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll just give everyone a moment and we'll get started. For those of you just joining, we'll give everyone a moment to funnel in and we'll get started shortly. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar presentation, Bringing Clarity to Qi Patent Landscape. I'm Leah Wilhelm, Director of Demand Gen here at LexisNexis Intellectual Property Solutions, and we have a really informative webinar planned for you today. But first, I would like to cover a few things before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to access it in a follow-up email. If you have any questions during this presentation, please use the Q&A section. If you have any audio-visual problems during the webinar, please let us know using the same question tool, and we will do our best to resolve them. We will answer as many questions as we can at the end, and once the webinar is over, you'll be prompted to complete a short survey where we welcome your feedback on the topic. Now, I will turn it over to today's presenter, Tim Pullman, CEO and founder of LexisNexis IPlytics. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you so much, Leah, for the kind introduction. And also from my side, welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is much more an educational webinar, hearing about the data we created around the Qi patent report. We do have a great agenda ahead of us. I will talk about the data challenge that we are facing for the Qi standard technology. I will then explain and elaborate on how to identify Qi relevant patents in the market, to then give you some of the statistics and trends of the data that we found, to then explain and present to you some of the use cases of how the data can be used and how, and that's the very last section, then this can be used when negotiating a SEP license. For example, if you want to compare different license agreements in the market or pool agreements in the market. To get started, I would like to start from the beginning. I know many of you are experts in the world of Qi technology, but not all of you know to a precision what the Qi standard does. And I make that very quick, I promise, but I want to start from the beginning. Qi is a technology that has been developed to wirelessly charging your device. And as you can see from that nice visual here, for example, you can charge your smartphone where you place this phone on a certain device, and without plugging in any cables or clutter, the phone wirelessly charges. There are different versions of that Qi standard. The latest version has been published last year, but it's not published in the public yet, and I will talk about this also later. What we can see, however, with wireless charging, in particular with Qi, is that we have had an increasing, or we observe an increasing number of devices that adopt the standard. And that starts maybe with smartphones and tablets, but that goes beyond that, also to healthcare devices, also to vehicles, also to furniture. What is the Qi standard? Qi is, as the question already says, a standardized technology, meaning it ratifies and specifies how to implement that technology into a device so that you can wisely charge that product. It has been set by the Wireless Power Consortia, which is a private consortia. It's not a public or formal consortium or standards organization like, for example, the European Telecommunications Association, ETSI, or the ISO, which comes with some differences, but still the Wireless Power Consortium is an open standardization body, meaning the standards at some point of time are publicly available, and it is open to any member. That's very important. Qi is really simplifying the way you charge your devices, since you can just place your device on a charging pad and it automatically will wirelessly charge. There are some market numbers on general wireless charging out there, estimating the market potential to over $22 billion US for wireless charging solutions. But the only thing that is, and everything, if you look at market numbers, basically points to the way that very likely in the future, we will charge everything wirelessly. But even the phones that today are compatible, for example, with the Qi standard, only 29% are wirelessly charged. So still people use a lot the plug of their phones because the technology may not always be there yet to be reliable, to charge every time you put it on there. Because as of today, most of the charging technologies, if you don't place your device exactly on the pad, it may not charge. But that may change with the new version of Qi 2.0. Here, the first version of Qi was ratified in 2008. So we came a long way. Now, 16 years later, 2.0, so the latest version of Qi has been published first to its members only last year in November, but in June, it will be published to the public. And here, some of the advances will make sure that the charging experience for the user is increasing. Nevertheless, over 9,000 products today are listed on the consortia website as being compatible to the Qi wireless charging standard. And another number suggests that over 1 billion Qi compatible products were sold in 2023. So we do see a large number of products really complying to the technology already today, but estimations say that this will further increase. For example, not all smartphone makers have integrated Qi into their smartphones, as for example, Apple has done that quite prominently, also now backward compatible to older generations of the phone. Qi is a standard, and that standard is subject to so-called standard essential patents. In other words, if you want to use the standard, you're also using these patented inventions, and you have to pay, when shipping those products, a royalty free for that. I don't want to go into details here, but there are in the IPR policy of the Wireless Power Consortium some cases where the standard is, you can use the standard royalty free, meaning, some of the devices that have some specificities in the product, you don't have to pay the license. Still, royalty free doesn't mean you don't have to sign a license maybe with a pool. It just means that you're on a royalty free basis, and that may change depending on how you implement the standard. What is different here is that the standard, different to other standards like the 5G standard, for example, does not have a database that tells you which of the patents in the world are potentially essential, meaning covered by the standard. There's actually no transparency provided by the consortia themselves, but some companies have provided information, and we do have transparency through a patent pool. Via LA, and actually in history, it was MPAC LA who launched the pool, but now through the merger with Via Licensing, Via LA is the administrator of the pool program where the Qi standard is licensed through. And Via LA also very transparently has a database that is publicly available on their website listing all those patents that have been third-party validated as being standard essential. And including those companies, or the companies that have actually submitted those patents, include the following companies here, which is Convenient Power, it's General Electric Licensing, it's Hyundai Mobis, it's Intel Corporation, it's Philips, LG Innotek, Panasonic, Robert Bosch, and Wetricity. Those companies license their standard essential patents through the pool, meaning if you are implementing the technology in your products, you can get a one-stop license from that patent pool. And they also show the rates on the website, which is from 20 cents dollars up to 85 cents, depending if you're, depending on if you are a receiver or producing a receiving device or a pad device which is chargeable. So it depends in the end on the product. And also on the website, it is defined which products are royalty free. If you're interested, it's all on the website. So we do have some data here. And as you know, IPlytics is a data company. So we look at the data very carefully. And on the Wireless Power Consortium website, they also provide links to the data, for example, to the VLA pool. But also Philips has published online a list of patents that they believe are standard essential, and PowerMat also has done that publicly. However, when we talk to market experts, the belief is that while the pool has already a good coverage, not all the patent owners of Qi standard essential patents are pool members, and not all standard essential patent owners have made statements publicly. And the estimate is that this is very likely more than 50% of the patents that are essential out there. That, however, means for us as a data company, if we look at this landscape, the landscape is incomplete. If more than 50% of the patent owners' portfolios are not in the landscape, then we have some blind spots in this. And this is why IPlytics has started to investigate how we can identify those patents from companies that are neither pool members nor publicly have declared any patents. How do we identify those patents in the world of worldwide patents that are related to the Qi standard? And we do that with a solution that is called Cipher Certified, which is a supervised machine learning algorithm, which identifies or uses training data to identify patents related to a particular technology. It starts with global data. So any patent potentially can be part of the landscape. It then uses classifiers to train and understand with positive examples. For example, what we used here are the pooled patents in VLA because we know they have been claim charted. So these are positive examples of patents that are standard essential for Qi. But also with negative examples, we, for example, looked at wireless charging patents for other wireless charging use cases, for example, electric vehicle charging patents that are related to wireless charging, but that are not, essential to the Qi standard. And with these training sets, we trained the algorithm to identify those patents that relate and correlate with the true positive training data, but that do not correlate with the true negative training data, which is still in the same technology field. Doing that is a quite iterative process because we also have test data here to always test if the classifier gives us accurate results. And we have subject matter experts that keep testing the data. For example, looking at patents that the classifier identifies and then maybe ruling out certain patents that are not related. So they will enter our negative list, or finding patents that very much look essential that we add to our positive list. To then, at the very end result, after that iterative process, coming up with a database that shows you these are Qi-related patents and these are Qi-unrelated patents. For the training data, we also are very transparent here. We're using the patents that are listed publicly on the pool website, and we refined the data with subject matter experts, as I said, in an iterative process. People always keep forgetting that equally important to that positive training data is negative training data. Ruling out noise from the database or from the landscape can be done with negative training data. And again, we looked at wireless charging technologies that are not Qi or not relevant to the Qi standard, and basically ruled out those patents and gave the training algorithm those as examples. If patents correlate with characteristics to those patents, we should keep them out of the landscape. This is a screenshot of the Cipher solution, and that is how our data analyst and subject matter experts can look at the data. And I think when producing data, it is very important to also have the people who produce the data look at the data in an iterative, constant way, because we have two types of errors that any data landscape creation is subject to. The first is pretty straightforward. It is precision, meaning recall and noise. Of course, our algorithm should recall all the patents that are known essential, right? That are, for example, part of the VLA pool. But at the same time, we have to be restrictive. We don't want too much noise in our landscape, meaning patents that are in the landscape, but they're not standard essential. And we can also find those patents and have tests to look at this. So we always look at the recall and the noise of the landscape that we create. However, what is also an error that we have to be very aware of is bias. Machine learning always depends on the training data. If you put in only, for example, US patents, you could assume that a training algorithm would identify only other US patents, leaving out, for example, Chinese patents or Korean or Japanese patents. The algorithm was developed in a way that you can rule out to a certain extent such biases, because it gives you statistics. This is your training data and this is the outcome data. And if in the outcome data, the jurisdictions, for example, are equally represented, then this gives you a hint that your outcome data is not biased as to the jurisdiction effect. We can also look at other patterns in the area, broader analysis, and see if jurisdictions are equally distributed compared to Qi. And all this analysis has been done for this landscape, not only for jurisdictions, but also for other indicators like time periods or companies. And of course, you could assume that pool members that are more representative in the training data, because their patterns are part of the training, are more and higher represented in the outcome. And also here that was tested several times to analyze if we have a company bias in there. So Cypher can, to a certain degree, rule out that bias, and you can instantly and constantly in iterations identify bias and rule it out. However, what Cypher cannot do, it cannot perfectly identify standard essential patterns. And that's a very important point here. The landscape that we create here includes standard essential patterns, and we have a great recall rate. So it includes all the pooled patterns, but it also includes non-SEPs. In other words, patterns that relate to Qi, that describe maybe even Qi technology, but that would not necessarily be essential to an implementation of the standard. So any data that I show you today has always the limitation of that, meaning a combination of SEPs and a combination of non-SEPs in the database, which is, and that's also why we called this undeclared patterns, similar to a situation of a declaration database, where, for example, at ETSI, companies self-declare their patterns, no third party basically identifies or checks these patterns as being standard essential. And we all know that the ETSI database for technologies like 5G includes both essential patterns, but also non-essential patterns that describe a technology close to the 5G technology, but it's not essential. And this is also what we did with Qi here, using the Cypher machine learning algorithm. Now, I give you some of the statistics here of that outcome. Just again to say, following that process, we identified 3,557 families as of January 1st that are active and worldwide, at least with one patent and one jurisdiction granted. So looking at the filing over time, and here we looked at the cumulative number of patents. So we looked at each year and looked at, for that particular year, how many patents were active and granted in at least one jurisdiction, as to the family definition of impedoc, by the way, to see, for each year, how did the whole landscape grow over time, right? And as you can see, if we compare, for example, the past 10 years, it has grown beyond factor 10x, right? So it really has been sharply increasing, showing that the Qi technology has been increasingly relevant, and companies have invested R&D really in improving the technology over time, and still are improving the technology because it is year by year still increasing at a very similar rate. Also, what we of course did, we looked at the owners of these patents. Again, we looked at patent families that are active and granted it in at least one jurisdiction. And we calculated for each company the share compared, their own portfolio compared to the whole stack of all patents we identified. Doing that in the first column, you see that the leaders here looking at this analysis are Samsung, Apple, Canon, LG, Panasonic, and Philips. What we did in the second column is we said, okay, we know that not every patent has the same value, right? The value within a portfolio is distributed differently. As many of you know, PatentSite, this is PatentSite has developed an indicator or an asset index called the Patent Asset Index. And the Patent Asset Index combines the patent family's forward citation it receives by other patents, as well as the family size of the patent. And it normalizes that and compares that with other comparable patents, basically to rule out, for example, the age effect of a patent. An old patent gets more cited than a younger patent. So they have done a great job in having a normalized indicator, no matter if the patent is a early or an old patent or a newer patent, to kind of have an indicator for each patent for that particular time period that calculates the number of family members in other jurisdictions that have been granted, as well as the rate as forward citations. This is, of course, not identifying whether or not these patents are essential, but it does give you some indications whether or not the portfolio is relevant in the market. And here, what is interesting that for some portfolios, like Philips, for example, the share drastically increases when we use the patent asset index into the analysis of the patent from 2.73% actually up to 10.18%. And that actually also makes sense. I don't know if you guys have followed our webinar last week, but we had Philips in as a speaker. John Sideris told us that Philips was one of the pioneers of the Qi technology development. 50% of the patents of the first Qi version came from Philips' portfolio alone. So that this portfolio, as the pioneer of that technology, is more valuable than others is also reflected in our data. And again, it shows that, data, depending on the refinement, may change in percentage of these portfolios. We do have a longer list here. These are the top 10. We have a list of up to, I think, 60 companies that have a patent that we have identified, or at least one patent family or more, actually, I think up to 10, that we identified as Qi relevant. Now, another analysis that we did is we looked at the headquarter, the region of the headquarter of these companies to understand the markets, because we are, of course, in a worldwide market of products and SEP licensing. And we wanted to understand, where are these companies located? What is interesting is that the majority of companies with 23.94% comes from Japan. It's very, very shortly followed by Korean companies, 23%, and then US companies was 21%. Chinese companies, surprisingly low at only 6%, Taiwanese at 2%, Dutch companies, German companies in there, and then other companies from other regions. So Japan, Korea are really the leading regions where the companies with Qi patents come from, followed by the United States. Now we looked at the other side of the table. So these were the patent owners of Qi technology. Now we looked at those manufacturers that have products in the market that are Qi compatible. And here we first of all only counted the products, not the number of shipments, just to clarify that. Samsung Electronics here by far has the largest number of products in the market. Also, Huawei has products that are Qi compatible, and other large companies are in the list. The list is actually pretty long. Lots of manufacturers have actually implemented Qi in whatever version into their products, the various products that they sell. Again, this goes beyond smartphones, tablets. This goes into device manufacturers in healthcare, in home appliances. Toothbrushes are part of this. And even vehicle manufacturers. Now we looked at the companies, the manufacturers that produce Qi-compliant products. And we found here that the largest market is in China. So Chinese companies have, on average, the largest number of products that are Qi compatible. Again, not counting by shipments, which would be more accurate, just by the number of products companies have in their portfolio. Chinese companies are closely followed by US companies, and both together make up most of the market, Chinese manufacturers and US manufacturers, only then followed by Korean or Japanese, German, Taiwanese, Dutch companies that are selling such products. Now, we have created all that data. We have that report out there. How are companies using the data in their day-to-day when they work with patent data for various reasons? First of all, and I think that is pretty straightforward, identifying those Qi patents gives transparency to the world of Qi technology, because right now what's publicly available is incomplete. More than 50% of the portfolios are missing. So what we have integrated in our database is a way to search these patents. We call them relevant undeclared patents. Again, not necessarily essential, but relevant to the technology. So you get an understanding who owns patents that, parts of their portfolio are essential. That really allows you to uncover who are the patent owners here. And if you are one of the owners, you can also now compare your own portfolio against those other companies, right? You can benchmark your portfolio and see, well, in what countries and what jurisdictions did they file patents? Where did we file patents? So it allows you to really make some benchmarking analysis that you are not able to do with the public data. And this is also something that I want to show you here in a short demo of how the data is integrated into the IPlytics interface. What you see here in the search interface, we're searching for Qi 1. This includes 1 and 1.3, by the way. I'm searching now or checking the box of all relevant patents. And now I get a first result. If I don't refine the data to active and granted, I have as much as over 5,000 patents there. And I can look at the different portfolios of the companies and visualize them and compare them. For example, which of the patents in the portfolio are still active? What's the rate of expiration in the portfolio, showing me how old the portfolio is, but also how many of those patents have already been granted, and what's the rate of only pending patents for these different patent owners. So having access to that complete picture allows you to do such kind of analysis. Here, for example, I look at authorities, and I see that most of the patents are first filing in the US, followed closely by China, then Japan, Korea. Europe is a little bit further away, but I can also then see by company where the first filings are and where the granted patents lie. Korean companies obviously file typically in Korea, Japanese companies more in Japan, but then we also have companies like Philips, interestingly, that filed patents, the majority of the patents in the US compared to Europe, and also a lot of patents in China, which shows also where the markets are, of course. I file my patents in those countries where I know there's a big product market and I have to secure my intellectual property. You can also see who started filing patents first, who came later, basically a whole analysis of, who or the competition landscape of all the Qi patent owners. And again, it's a complete landscape, meaning it includes all patent owners that somehow have a portfolio that relates to Qi. And that helps different people in our market. Our customers often are, for example, patent portfolio managers that need to relate their patents and portfolio against those of their competitors, or that want to monitor the market if a new player comes in, or that want to benchmark and do strengths and weakness analysis related to other portfolios. But also, many of our customers are, of course, licensing managers, deal makers, those people who are in the process and who are in the negotiation when patents are licensed, right? It starts all with setting up your portfolio or understanding which of your patents and portfolio should, for example, be submitted to a pool. Or if you're not a pool member, you want to create a licensing program, you want to know which patents are fit for licensing. And for all that decision-making, you can use data that it gives you at least a starting point to understand these are relevant patents. I may, of course, need some claim charting to submit the patents, which is nothing that IP Analytics provides, but it's the first step to identify which patents are actually relevant and even potentially essential here. And that, again, also allows you to sort your patents and find those patents that are more relevant compared to those that are weaker. And of course, not only the patent owners use the data, also the licensees, those companies that are manufacturing the products and are asked for royalties, because of course they get confronted with paying a certain royalty amount from, for example, a patent pool or any other patent owner. And that patent owner and that patent pool will come along with a license and a certain rate at which the product should be licensed. But you need to know, of course, how many of those patents are actually covered and how many other companies are outside of the pool, for example, that I also need to pay royalties for. Data is a starting point. It may not be the final solution, but it gives you access to very objective, as I said. We're using a tool that allows you to look also at bias of the data. So a very objective approach to identifying those patents to prepare arguments for your FRAND negotiation when you are, discussing the data or the license with other companies. And I want to give you some more specific examples of how you can do that. Extrapolating from data and, for example, a pool offer that is transparently listed in the market, what the total number of or the total amount of royalties, the royalty stack or the aggregated royalty is. As I said, publicly available, you find the rates on the VLA website, which is, I think, in general, we have to appreciate that patent pools give us some price point in the market, which is a good starting point to understand, this is a price point that was defined, whoever defined it and whoever provided evidence for that price, but it's at least a price point in the market that, if you look at the licensees, has been accepted by some of the licensees already. And they have two rates or two categories of rates, depending on your products, which is 20 cents for the receivers, smartphones, tablets, but the transmitters at a higher rate, 25% up to 85%. Now, what does that price point give you? Let's say you are a smartphone manufacturer. You know now that VLA provides you, patents from a certain number of patent owners for 20 cents per device, right? What you do not know, however, is what's the actual market share? How many of those patents in the pool, how much does the pool represent of the total market, right? What's the share of that pool? What you also do not know is, what does the royalty ask for others outside of the pool? Who are these companies? And are there maybe unknown companies that I don't even have on my radar that may come after me at some point, right? So getting the full market picture is super important to, get some information where I have question marks here, with actual data. Because in the end, very often in licensing negotiations, you need to understand the share of the patents of the patent that is offered. Same as the company that offers a license has to kind of represent the size of their portfolio and how strong it is in the market. So that very simple equation of the numerator and denominator is very often part of that negotiations. And you have to put in some data there. And if not, if not all claim charts are available, then you may use some data that approximates the numerator and the denominator. What is important to say, however, you should not compare apples with oranges. Don't put the pool data in the numerator, the claim charted patents, and compare it to a database like ours, which has both claim charted patents and relevant but non-essential patents, because then you really compare apples with oranges. So that is some advice I have to give you to not do, or to not, inflate some of the sizes of the patents out there. What you can do, however, with a tool like IPlytics, you can tailor your analysis to the actual case that you're negotiating. It may be that you're selling your products only in one particular market. So all you want to look at is, for example, US patents. It may be that you have sold your products only starting from a certain time period. So any patent that is expired before that should be ruled out of the analysis. Or it may be that your products yet are only compliant to a certain version of the standard, and you want to rule out all patents relating to another version. So that's the beauty of data in a tool like IPlytics, that you can really define your own particular case and then identify the data and the shares for that particular case, which is the jurisdiction, the time, the standard, the version of that. One example, and I'm just saying here, this is not, the share of the Qi pool always, but it's one example. If you would look at all patents that are out there that have been, granted in one jurisdiction and are active, and would aggregate them to the Qi pool of VLA, you would, aggregate all these different portfolios to one group. And I show you how that can be done in a solution like IPlytics. That group then can be shown in an analytics table representing all the pool members and the share of the patents in that pool. With that data, right, you can now extrapolate a price, because VLA says 20 cents per smartphone. Let's say that represents about 20%, 19.8% of all patents. You can aggregate, extrapolate that in a very simple equation, showing you that, oh, actually, that means if I would, if everyone would ask me royalties at a similar rate as VIA, I would end up at $1 per device, right? That could be one analysis. Again, it is data. So we have run analysis where the VLA pool has 30% or 40% of the whole market, depending on the jurisdiction, if we're counting in granted patents or not, if we're counting in certain expired patents or not. That really depends on the definition of the data. But no matter with what percentage you agree, for example, also with the other negotiating party, IPlytics allows you to extrapolate from there and then calculate the whole aggregate royalty burden. Because with that royalty burden, you can better define if someone else comes along and offers a portfolio for you to be licensed, and you, for example, compare that to the pool license, you can very quickly identify, is that offer excessive or is it at a very similar rate as the pool? And these are ways to compare license offers. Maybe you already signed a license offer and you want to compare your internal license offer and the company that you signed with other external companies that come at you. So data helps you at least to bridge the gap of comparing different portfolios, comparing a pool offering to another portfolio offering that you're getting offered. Same as from the perspective of the patent owner, if you're identifying a good price point for your pool, or if you are outside of the pool, identifying a good price point, you may want to benchmark your portfolio against the pool and the price they defined, right? Just to understand if you're above or below. And there may be good reasons to be above or below, because your portfolio may be more valuable and you have evidence for that. But it allows you, again, is to give you a starting point of data that you can look at. And again, I want to show you how you can do that in a solution like IPlytics, where you search for the data, the undeclared patents that relate to the Qi standard. But now you don't want to look at the patent ownership of each patent owner, but you want to aggregate all pool members, and I just activated that here, to one entity. And now, you know, the likes of Philips, the likes of General Electric Licensing and LG Innotek are all integrated into that pool group. And now you can analyze the patent pool as a separate entity. In the world of licensing, a pool is almost like a separate entity. It's like its own entity that gives you the one-stop shop. And now you can compare the Qi, you know, patents, the pooled patents, compared to everyone outside of the pooled patents, and look at different shares, you know, again, analyze the data as to different refinements and filtering of the data to then, you know, see how the size of the pool changes depending on the refinement of the data. That is typically dependent on your licensing deal or, you know, the realities of where the products are shipped. But it also gives you a way to identify patents in the portfolio and, for example, sort them and understand which are the more relevant or the less relevant patents. And what we have at IPlytics here also is an indication of how the claims relate to the sections. Again, that's not claim charting, but it gives you a starting point. It gives you a starting point to say, okay, that claim and that section are most likely related. And now a subject matter expert saves some time. He can look at that claim in that section and then approves or disapproves that this is essential or not. So data is never perfect. I think we are very open with that. You cannot push a button and get all essential patents for Qi. And you can also not, you know, use our claim section comparison and say it replaces claim charting. We're not there that far yet. But data can be a starting point to help you get to the final or to agreement with the other party faster. We at IPlytics have a big coverage of different standards, not only Qi, of course, across different standards organization, covering cellular technology, 3G, 4G, 5G, wireless technology like Wi-Fi, video, audio codecs, but also wireless power technology like Qi. We have a lot of data from patent pools, but also patent declarations. We have data also about the actual standards and the full text standard document, but also the contributions that went into the standard when the standard was developed. And then we allow to refine the data, for example, categorizing standards into different generation, to different protocols like NB-IoT, different groups, or comparing, for example, the device level compared to the network base station level, to then give you some indication on how likely a patent is essential or not, like how does the claim relate to the section. Again, that's not claim charting, but maybe a starting point. But then something that I explained to you today to identify those patents that are not publicly listed, that are not declared, that are not in a pool, but that are still essential and out there. And again, this is data, so we can give you a first step. We can give you the portfolios of the companies that are not pooled or declared, where some of the patents that we identify will end up essential, but also some patents will end up as being related and non-essential. And that is really what IPlytics is about, giving you all the data in your hands as a tool, as a solution, to give you a starting point, to get more clarity on the information out there and more clarity for your decision-making and more clarity also for your subject matter experts that you still need in the process to give you more detailed information, whether or not a patent is essential or relevant to a standard. And I think our customers are worldwide customers from both sides of the table. For example, 97% of the top SEP holders are IPlytics customers, but also many of the implementers from the automotive supplier industry, but also from other new industries that are now in the market, that come from IoT use cases, that come from different new video platforms, that come from, you know, patent pools are customers, of course. So all these companies use our data in their day-to-day licensing negotiations, but also portfolio management. And again, we keep saying IPlytics is one reference point among others in that whole process, right? But it can give you a starting point. It can give you a better understanding and perspective. But it has to be combined in licensing negotiations with other things, with comparable license agreements, with subject matter expert testimony, with claim charts, with all that information that is needed to have a more informed understanding of each other's portfolios, of the market, of what is what's an acceptable and reasonable licensing rate out of the market, and what may be a little bit overpriced. That was it for today. I hope it was informative. I hope you learned something about Qi patents and how we created our interface and how we created the database. If you want to learn more, I have very capable colleagues that can show you, your own particular individual use case. We give you a demo on IPlytics. There's a link here, LexisNexis IP IPlytics demo. And one of our SEP experts will reach out to you and organize that call with you. So we can show you more. We can show you more data also in our tool. And we also have content that may be of interest to you. We are publishing different reports on different standards. We have different podcasts that you can listen to. We have webinars like this that you can join. We also have in-person events that you can join no matter depending on where you're located. One is, for example, at the Berkeley University soon on June 13th. So should you be in the Bay Area, don't miss on this one. But all of that you can find on our website if you're interested to learn more. We are really here to educate the market, to provide information on the world of SCPs and FRAND licensing. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you at the next webinar or episode that we're organizing. Thank you.